Just slid into place. Thought I had the timing right on that, but I can't do clock math. Hello, everybody out there. I am Andrew Winnestorfer from Vinyl Me Please, the editorial director and Classics A&R. And I'm here to do the first of what we hope are a few Facebook Live AMAs. So you guys can fire questions in this chat box that is here on the right. And I will also answer the questions that are stacked up on the post that we had announcing these. So I apologize in advance if I butcher anybody's name. I'm not good at reading names, even though I have a complicated last name. So let's get this started. Cameron Schaefer, who is my boss and friend and Vinyl Me Please, said, did anybody else see the VMP Queen Latifah on NBC Nightly News? I did not. I was here. If you could explain in the chat box what that is about, give us all a holler. All right, let's get into these questions here. Make sure I don't miss any. This is what it must feel like to be a Twitch streamer, where you are just like talking into the void and you hope that people hear you. Okay, show your Stax tattoo. I have a Stax Records tattoo. I don't know the best way to do that on my computer's webcam. I also have a Volt Records tattoo. So if you're a betting person on what VMP Anthology will eventually encompass, I think Stax Volt is probably a very safe bet, and probably Chess Records as well, being that I wear this hat everywhere I go. Okay, so let's start with Jack Shepler. What's up, Jack? You asked, what is your favorite hot sauce? That is a question that I feel like I am very well equipped to answer. I love hot sauce and think about it a lot and try many different varieties. I really like the secret aardvark sauce that you have to buy on Amazon. That's like in the Portland area. But a secret heater that I'm going to tell you about here on the AMA is that Tabasco brand's sriracha is actually super good. That's what I put on like pizza and grilled cheese and my eggs in the morning. It's like a little bit sweet, but it also has a good kick. The Trader Joe's brand sriracha is also super good. So you can't really go wrong with either of those. All right. Robert Haas asks, when are you going to announce Blue Note Anthology Volume 2? I don't know, man. How about we get through the first one first, and then we can start thinking about, a second one. It would be amazing to do 2 of Blue Note, but the challenge of pulling off the one first is still happening. So we can maybe address that in the future. Let's look here. John Passelqua says, for future anthologies, are different jazz labels being considered? Like Impulse, Prestige, Riverside, Pacific Jazz, all would be popular picks, I would think. Yeah, I mean, I think we're thinking about this in a lot of different ways. It could be more labels oriented. It could be artist related. I know that we have a metaphorical whiteboard of different labels we might want to work with. I mean, Impulse would be an incredible one. I think there's a lot of stuff there that hasn't been reissued that could get reissued. Prestige is another one, like that's managed by our pals at Craft. I think, I mean, the long answer is any jazz label that has like a dope catalog would be a target for this. Um, John Passelqua, who he put a lot of questions in on this one. Thank you, John. What is your story on jazz? How did you come to it? What albums sucked you in, and what are some of your favorites now? Let me go backwards through that question. Some of my favorites right now are the Joel Ross record that comes out on Friday on Blue Note, actually. Keep Your Eyes Peeled on the VMP store for that one. That record is really really good. It feels a lot like it's in dialogue with like Ambrose Akamuzer, Kamasi Washington, but it's played by a vibraphonist and really talented arranger. So that one is like one. Look for that on Friday when it comes out. It'll be on streaming services everywhere. The other one I really really like from this year is the Comet Is Coming record. I think if you're into jazz, you're probably aware of Shabaka Hutchings. I think that record is like a weird mutant jazz disco funk thing. That I think that it's between that and the Jamila Woods record that comes out next month, or I guess this month, for my favorite records of this year so far. I saw the Comet Is Coming at South by Southwest and spent most of their set standing like this, holding the same chess hat on my head, just trying to, comprehend what I was seeing. Yeah. So what was the other part of this? I forgot now. What album sucked me in? So I was a teenager, 15, 16-year-old who wanted to listen to music that was different than like Hoobastank and Incubus, like the big bands when I was in high school. I'm from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And the bands that were like popular in 2001, 2002, I wanted to like listen to stuff that was much different than that. And I think like a lot of people, it was, Miles Davis was like the first artist that I listened to because you just knew that he was cool. And I had a Birth of the Cool t-shirt, I think for like a year before I actually heard Birth of the Cool, like you do when you're in high school. And so like he was like my gateway, and I think it was Birth of the Cool was like the first jazz record I ever bought on CD. But then I would say like the record that like really made me like realize the possibilities of jazz was A Love Supreme. It's a boring answer, but it's like there's a reason that everybody loves Love Supreme, because it's just like one of the best albums of all time. And like once I was able to like really get into Coltrane and A Love Supreme, it kind of like opened up all of the other doors for like the jazz that I like. And then in my late 20s, got super into Miles Davis again, to the point where I think I have every Columbia Miles Davis studio album. Like I went on like a quest, and that was actually part of, I think some people know this, but like part of me, of the Vinyl Me Please reissuing Miles Davis's Sorcerer was because that was one record that I did not have from that run that I could not find, and like was like, why is this so expensive? And we like looked into it and we're like, this should really get reissued. Like, why is it so hard to find? So like Miles Davis and John Coltrane, I know that's not like a super exciting record, but like exciting answer, but I don't think that I'm like really embarrassed by that. Like, they're two of the best jazz artists of all time, and that's how I got into jazz. And I guess I played, like, I was reminded of this actually by my dad like a couple of weeks ago, that I played in jazz band in high school or in middle school, and I think even played like a couple of like my favorite things or whatever, like classic jazz standards, but I was horrible at drumming, so I think my like memory has allowed me to forget that part of it. All right, let's do Robert Haas asks, are you going to do an anthology focus on any individual artists, and why is it Charles Mingus? Yeah, man, that Charles Mingus would be a good single artist to do it on. I've really been into the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. That record, that is like, I think that's like one of the crown jewels of the Impulse catalog. So, I mean, maybe we don't, if we don't do Impulse, we'll do Charles Mingus and do that record, you know? Um, let's go down. I've been giving the people on the top of this list a lot of love. Rob Novak asks, has VMP ever considered leveraging GZ's DMM capabilities for any releases, especially jazz recordings where there's more space in the music that would benefit from a lower noise floor? The short answer is yes. We have done DMM with GZ. In fact, we use it a decent amount, but like I know for sure on our rap records, that's like a big thing that we do. That like we think that rap music sounds a lot better on DMM at GZ. So yes, we do DMM. We you know, like we know that the all analog AAA, you know, like that's the gold standard, but sometimes like DMM makes like really great sounding records. So we're not like, you know, hex to DMM or whatever. Paul James says, I saw this one earlier and laughed at this. Hi, Andrew. Why did Miles Davis call Eric Dolphy a sad motherfucker? Is this a criticism of Dolphy's technique, or is there something lacking in Miles's soul? That is a excellent question. I actually wonder if it's, I mean, Eric Dolphy was sort of a sad motherfucker when you think of his story, right? Like he died really young and was like, you know, only got to make Out to Lunch as his like one record as a band leader. And it was super weird. And he didn't get the opportunity to like really play that out. Like he didn't get the like full arc that like Miles got, where he got to go from, you know, making pretty traditional records to making left field records to making fusion records. So I don't know, man. Maybe it's just that, you know, Eric Dolphy, it's a sad story. And, you know, hopefully, I mean, I guess not hopefully, like hopefully Miles Davis didn't fucking hate him. But I guess that's really about between Miles and Eric Dolphy. Here's Matt Holding. What are the chances of additional tracks a la punk and metal and indie rock separate from the Essentials track coming to the Record of the Month roster? I mean, that's a thing that, you know, we obviously, Classics is now 2 years old, and Rap and Hip Hop will be 2 years old. So we've like obviously have done side subscriptions. I think the odds that like indie rock would be one is probably pretty slim. I think if you like indie rock, Essentials has given you a lot of, you know, records to like. I know that it's been, you know, a little less indie heavy in the last 6 months, but, you know, last year we did Arctic Monkeys, Beach House, TV on the Radio in a, you know, 4-month span. So, you know, and we're going to give you some indie rock next month in Essentials. I mean, I think it would be interesting. I mean, punk and metal are always like the ones that we get requested as a side sub, but you know, metal bands don't necessarily always need our help in pressing cool vinyl editions. Like, you know, there are metal bands who do like 7-8 variants for every record, and you know, we like us doing another one maybe doesn't make as much sense. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I think the longer answer is I don't know if there's going to be another side sub. I think punk and metal is more likely than us doing, you know, us doing a indie rock one. And I just realized that there are more comments on the sidebar that I have not been paying attention to. So let me get into some of this stuff here. Is there any significance to my chess hat next release? The significance to my chess hat is that I am a boring person who likes my fashion to reflect the record labels that I'm interested in, which explains why I have a Stax and Volt tattoo. I don't have much imagination, and when I saw a chess hat existed, I got a chess hat. I mean, we did Buddy Guy's Left My Blues in San Francisco. I would bet that we do more chess releases and classics going forward. But the significance of my chess hat to this AMA is just that I have a big head and it's cold outside and my hair is messy. Slap Ya Mama Cajun hot sauce. Actually, we did get a Jack Shepler. We did get a bottle of Slap Ya Mama when we were in New Orleans. It is very good. I still like that kind of hot sauce. I feel like I'm more of a guy that like slathers it on, and when you have to do a lot of the shaking, I'm like a little bit less enthusiastic about it. Timothy Ingsen says, would you describe the extent the VMP team go to ensuring VMP reissues look and sound great? We go to incredible lengths. It is literally what somebody is working on right now for August at this point. We're always working far ahead. We try to make our records sound the best they can. We want to make the package the coolest that it can be. Like basically there's not an insignificant amount of time for multiple people to make sure that our records are good. So, Cameron Schaefer says, why should people listen to jazz? I think if you listen to the first episode of the VMP podcast, VMP Anthology, the story of Blue Note Records, I think Don Was really like gave what I think is like the most complete answer to that question, where it's like it's a music that does not tell you how to feel. Like you can really go into listening to like Kind of Blue by Miles Davis and basically decide what is being conveyed. And I think that that's like a very special thing that you don't get in most music. Like you don't, you hear a blues song, like how you're supposed to feel. If you're listening to like Kind of Blue, there is nobody taking you by the collar and saying like, this is a sad song. Like it's up to you how you interpret it. And I think that that's like, it ultimately can have like a very meditative effect on you when you can like listen to a record and not be dictated how you're supposed to feel. Because there's not many entertainments that are around that allow you that courtesy. Michael Andrews says, VMP Anthology website indicates that there'll be some giveaways. Any indication as what they're going to look like and when they'll take place? I am not the person who's doing that. That is Emily, our community manager. There will be giveaways. What those will be, we're still completely ironing out. I'd imagine they'll be through a combination of Facebook and the email. So, keep an eye out. We'll make sure like there's only, there's 1,000 of you in this group. We'll make sure that the 1,000 of you are like, well aware that this contest is happening. Alan Bunch says, any Chet Baker being considered? He's somebody that's on my long list for the classic subscription. It's a matter of sort of figuring out, which combination of like which Chet Baker record needs a reissue, which one is like really good. I just honestly haven't had the time to do that, but I'd love to do a Chet Baker record at some point. Roger Feature says, how many anthologies are you guys thinking about moving forward? Is it dependent on this one? How many could you see doing in a single year if they go as well as we all hope? That answer is TBD. We definitely are working on what 2 and 3 are going to be. I personally have read 7 books in the last like 2 or 3 weeks to get ready to do the podcast for Anthology 2, I think it's going to be. But yeah, I could see us doing 3 or 4 of these this year as we get better at doing them and knowing exactly how long they take and the whole, process of it. Like, I don't know. I don't think we'll do 12 a year, but could I see us doing 5 or 6? Like maybe. I guess I'll be, in addition to being an editorial director, I'll be running like a podcast arm of Vinyl Me Please if that happens. So that'd be really rad. Like we were blown away by the reaction to this first one. that this happened. We sold out so quickly. Like, we never thought that was going to be the case. So, all at this point, all indications are we're full steam ahead. Anthology is a resounding success so far. So there will be more, I think. All right. Let me see. Did Miles hate Eric Dolphy's style of jazz? He probably did. Miles was a cantankerous guy. Jack Shepler, yes, Anthology will be other genres. At least the next 2 or 3 that we have planned will not be jazz. So they won't all be jazz. But, would there be another jazz one at some point? I think almost certainly. Drew Townsend asks, what was your most memorable experience doing the Blue Note Anthology? My most memorable experience was probably doing the actual podcast interview for me personally. It was kind of like a thing where we had this like idea of doing Anthology, and it came together like really quickly. So I spent like the week of Thanksgiving and the week after in a like research like foxhole to get ready to do that interview. And I like got to go to the Capitol Records building, which I've been to LA, I think once. Once in my life I had been to LA prior to this. And that was the first time I went to LA was for Amelia, my associate editor. She was the intern at that time, to interview St. Vincent from when we did that record of the month. So I'd only been to LA once, and so I like had never been like downtown and like I even seen the Capitol Records building up close, because the last time I was there I was in and out in like I think 36 hours. So it was like really amazing to just like be at the Capitol Records building. I took a picture laying on Garth Brooks's Star, and I was in a studio recording the podcast. And like the engineer that was there was like, yeah, just so you know, later today, like once you guys are done, Steve Perry is going to be in here. So try to keep it neat in the room. And I was just like, this is a really surreal experience to be like a guy from Madison, Wisconsin, to like suddenly be, in LA, recording a podcast, where Steve Perry from Journey was going to be recording later that day. Carcass released 18 different vinyl variants of their last album. I'm not surprised. Jack Shepler says, would love to see an anthology about Chicago house music. Yeah, man, me too. So, What books have I read recently? Nice try, Roger Feature. I'm not going to give you that information. I have read a lot of books, so know that the label and box that we're considering next will have a lot of books written about it. But non-music books, I read this novel by John Lanchester called The Wall recently. That was like insanely good, and one of like a few books I've read in the recent memory. I usually read nonfiction, but like a recent novel that I like really want to be a TV show. Like I'm like envisioning like an 8-episode HBO show. And yeah, so check that out. John Lanchester's The Wall. Jack Shepler, do you have hints for us for June's releases today? I just said earlier that the June Essentials record is going to be indie rock. If you like Southern rap music, next month's Rap and Hip Hop will be up your alley. And then how about for classics, if you really like gospel music, it'll be a gospel month in classics. Let me take a quick drink of some Dasani water. Shout out Dasani. Let's take a look at some of these questions that are piled up in the thread. Robert Haas asked, blink twice if Fiona is coming soon. Blink twice when? Jamie Hooferump says, it's not Beck. Shout out Vinyl Me Please Forum, who literally tried to get me kicked off of there in the first month I was on because I kept telling everybody that the record of the month was not Beck, and they were convinced it was, and that it was not, but the next month was. That was a delightful time on the internet. Danny Hines asks, what takes priority in a classics release? Showcasing lost classics, availability of high quality audio, historical significance, or something else? I've really been enjoying the track even though I only joined recently. Also, any chance of a collaboration with the Alan Lomax archive? For that last part, sure, tell the Alan Lomax archive to hit me up. I'd love to work with them. As far as the beginning part of the question, as the person who's like sort of responsible for like targeting classics releases for us, I basically pick them, and then Alex, our head of A&R, and Levi, our head of production, they are the ones who actually like make them happen. I'm just the one who's like, hey, we should do Al Green's Call Me. Wouldn't that be cool? And then they do their thing, and then a record shows up. I make sure the liner notes happen, and then the thing shows up a couple months later. It's a complicated thing. It's like I'm trying to pick records at this point that I want it to be sort of like name artists, like artists that you may have heard or vaguely familiar with, but maybe artists that you haven't done a full deep dive with in terms of their catalog. So, like with Al Green, I think like Call Me is a record that like maybe a lot of people don't get to, but like at the time of its release was like considered like, this is the Al Green masterpiece. Like, this is it, man. Like, he finally made a perfect album. And I think that narrative has been lost over the years. And the same thing sort of goes with, a Blossom Dearie, which is actually Alex's pick. She was the one who was like, we should do a Blossom Dearie record. That Blossom Dearie pick, it's like she was an incredible artist and well known at the time, but like, isn't the like standard vocal jazz artist you think of. It's like, Billie Holiday at this point is what that genre has been like winnowed down to in like the popular conception. So it's a lot of like, I mostly am looking at the record first, and then it's like all of the other stuff determines whether or not it's happening. I like really am like, like with Al Green, it was like, I want to do this record. Then it was, okay, when was the most recent reissue? And it'd been like more than 10 years. And then it was like, who owns it? And then it's, emailed our pals at Fat Possum. Fat Possum was like, we'd love for you to do this. What do you guys need? And then we were like, do you have original tapes? I think we're pushing a lot harder to get original tapes in, most, if not all of the classics releases. I know that the next two, at least, will definitely be, in addition to Al Green being from the original tapes. But it really starts at like, is this record really good and sort of underrated and worthy of like getting this, couple thousand album press reissue that, is going to end up in a bunch of living rooms. That's like really where it starts for me. And, everything else kind of just is window dressing in some respects. Any audio files on the VMP team? Timothy asks. Yes, Cameron Schaefer. He is our audiophile guy. One time I stayed with him when I went out to his house, went out to visit at HQ in Denver, and he had like $30,000 speakers he was trying out. Yes, there are audio files. I think Levi, who's on our team, is pretty big on that. But me personally, I have like really shitty ears and can't tell the difference between something that sounds really good. I really trust Cam on that regard. So I currently just have a U-turn playing out of like a speaker that's literally made out of an old Doobie Brothers record, because my ears are horrible, and I like have spent a lot of money on stereo equipment in the past and been like, I can't really tell. But there are definitely like, don't get the impression that nobody at VMP cares about that. We really are Me personally, I am not. Um, all right, Alex Murdy. Does the Essentials indie band feature in Meet Me in the Bathroom? I think so. I've read Meet Me in the Bathroom a couple times. As far as I'm concerned, that should be standard issue at this point. Everybody should read Meet Me in the Bathroom. I think they're in there. Derek Young, did you talk any Grateful Dead / Bob Weir with Don Was? Saw them together this year. So cool knowing the collective knowledge of those two collaborating. In fact, I did. Don, I think, had gotten off tour with Bob like 3 days before we went and did that interview. He was like, he like arranges his work schedule at Capitol Towers around when he's going to like be on tour for different things. So he was like back in LA, had just gotten off like I think the West Coast run or maybe East Coast. And he was talking a lot about like what it was like to be out on the road and how like relaxed he was about playing with Bob. And that like it was just like a really fun experience. I think the thing that I'm excited about is they're supposed to go on like a Midwest tour at some point here, and like him and Bob Weir and Don Was. I don't know that if I'm gonna I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hold Don to this, but he told me that they will take me out to dinner when they're in town. So I am like really excited that if they actually do play Madison, like he thought they were. I'm going to go and make Don Was and Bob Weir buy me pizza, I think. What VMP release is my most spun record? My most spun VMP record is probably William Bell's The Soul of a Bell. That was our classics record in April of last year. If you read the listening notes booklet / went to our website, I had like the amazing opportunity of going to Atlanta and spending, I think like better part of 3 hours with William Bell in his like recording studio. And just like listening to him basically like give me his full life story. And the stuff that ended up in the booklet is only like the tip of the iceberg of like the stories that I got to hear from William Bell about like Otis Redding, about being on Stax, about like being in the army during Vietnam, like this incredible thing. And it's just like it was probably like my most, like the best interview I think I've ever done. Don Was not included. The best like interview that I've ever had. And just like an incredible thing that like I decided William Bell's the guy, he's alive. I had to go to Appleton, Wisconsin to see William Bell in November before I went and interviewed him in January of 2018. In November of 2017, I had to drive up to Appleton to meet him in person first when he was on tour in order to like convince him that I was the guy to interview him. And it was like a really funny experience because I show up at the backstage area at this like really fancy performing arts center in Appleton, Wisconsin. And I go in the room and, you know, his like road manager says like, hey, this is the guy from Vinyl Me Please. And like William Bell takes his sunglasses off, looks me up and down and goes, man, you are way younger than I thought you were going to be. And him and I laughed for like 4 minutes about that. So it was just like, it was like a lot of work on my part to make it happen. And it was just like an incredible, like an experience that I'm going to remember probably until I am dead. And I have a signed other, like an additional copy, like an original Soul of a Bell that I had him sign for me that is like framed in my home office. Like, yeah. So that's my most spun VMP record. Do you suppose Don Was has listened, Christopher Cayley, do you suppose Don Was has listened to every Blue Note record by now? Is that even possible? I don't think he has. He knows that the catalog rules, though, which is like, you know, most important probably. And he, like him and I talk. I think it's on the first episode, but it might be later in the podcast. Just about like, just knowing that like you can walk into the vault at Blue Note and be like, here's this random old, you know, Dexter Gordon record that, you know, maybe isn't like Go, and like put that on and know that you're going to hear like incredible playing and like, you know, some of the best jazz of all time. So it was like, you know, I think he knows that the catalog rules, and I don't know that anybody has listened to it. Maybe Shem has listened to everything. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be a life just to be able to like listen to Blue Note records all day? Roger Feature says, "How do you find new music?" Honestly, at this point in my life, a lot of labels email me that new music. So I get like stuff that is like not, I mean, for a good example is the today in our store. If you go to the store right now, there's a Lucas Nelson record, Son of Willie. Lucas Nelson and the Promise of the Real. They have an album coming out in July. I got that sent to me in the end of March, early April. I listened to it and thought that it ruled. And so that's how I got to hear new music. But I also, happen to work with like, full time with 22 other music lovers. So, there's Alex, our A&R head, who is always like, she's like an incredible resource for like what's new. Like everything on VMP Rising is like her pick. I work with Amelia, our associate editor, who also is like very into like the DIY indie rock scene. So I hear that stuff. And then our staff writer, Michael, is always telling me about like which rap songs to listen to. So I have like, I'm 33 years old and I'm pretty well up on new music, just largely from working here and having like good relationships with people who know new music. And I think that's like an important part of like keeping up on new music is just like being dumb and saying like, hey, like what is new and good? And usually people will tell you. So that's how I find out new stuff. Timothy asks, what were the record labels that were great with the level of mastering sound quality that VMP found hard to beat? I'm afraid I don't know super the answer to that question because I'm usually not on that end. I don't know like when the master tapes come in, like if they're better than others. Like I said, I have terrible ears. I mean, we know that we have remastering engineers we love to work with. I don't really know, if there's any specific labels that, have really good stuff. I mean, the Al Green thing, the fact that Fat Possum had like, the original master tapes was amazing. But yeah. Dennis Randall asks, what's your Desert Island Jazz record? Desert Island Jazz record. I assume that this is if I'm going to be stuck on a desert island and I can never listen to anything but this jazz record. I mean, I think it would probably be Kind of Blue or Love Supreme, just because I feel like if I'm stuck on a desert island by myself, I want something that's going to be pretty emotional. And like that'll allow me to like, be when I have triumphs, like I, made like a really great coconut gourd or whatever. I can be like really happy, or I can be really sad if I'm lonely and stuck on an island and eating mostly palm fronds or whatever. Roger says, you mentioned not being embarrassed about Davis and Coltrane being your introduction to jazz. What music do you enjoy that you are embarrassed about? I don't know that I'm necessarily embarrassed by anything anymore at this point. I mean, like, I'm 33 and I think I don't know if it's like true to say I'm like outgrown being embarrassed by it, but like, I don't know, like life is short and like there's stuff, if I like listening to some kind of music, like it's not like the alternative for me is that I'm going to like solve Cold Fusion. If I'm not, if I wasn't listening to Lil Nas X's Old Town Road remix with Billy Ray Cyrus, like would I solve like cancer? Like no. So I don't really like, I don't super feel guilty. Is there stuff that like my wife makes me turn off when I'm playing at home? Yeah, like that happens more often at this point probably. And for fun fact, it's not the Old Town Road remix that she makes me turn off. It's like My Morning Jacket or something like that. Jack Shepler, are you a fan of Lizzo? Man, I live in Madison, Wisconsin. She used to live in Minneapolis. I think I've seen Lizzo on accident like 9 or 10 times. Like she would play like the Madison Quarterly practically in like 2009, 2010, 2011. She rules. I'm like way in on Lizzo. My wife and I have records that we call shower albums because we have a big Bluetooth speaker in our bathroom, and my wife plays an album like on repeat for like weeks. That's what she listens to every morning. It's been the Lizzo record for like 2 weeks, whenever that record came out. Yeah, it rules. It's not on vinyl, but not because of us. We asked, and I think it's going to be on vinyl. It just unfortunately won't be from VMP. We love her. Maybe we can get some in the store. Derek Young says, love the first episode of the podcast. Any chance future episodes will be longer? Was hungry for more and could listen to you and Don talk shop for an hour plus. Yeah, so I think all told, the podcast is... Look, I think I might have it all on my phone right now. I think together it's like a little bit longer than 2 hours. It could have been longer, but so like most of the episodes are about a half hour, I guess is what. So not necessarily longer, but I mean, it's one interview that is like kind of chopped up with like narration from me in between. So it's not necessarily longer. The next anthology, I think the podcast could get even like longer and probably more unwieldy. There are like multiple locations that I'm probably going to be going to do interviews in. So yeah, I appreciate the kind words on the podcast. Right now, I think they're all going to be about a half hour long, mostly because that's the capacity. Like we've never done a podcast like this, and like I honestly like had never written for a podcast, so like I was very concerned about making it too long, and then like got back, one of the episodes was like 23 minutes when I assumed it was going to be like 50 minutes. So yeah, thank you for the kind words. Podcast will will hopefully be cool for everybody. Christopher Carther Crone asked, do you listen to the Broken Record podcast? I feel like that podcast would be right up your alley. That's one that I kind of go in and out on. Like I listen to like 3 or 4 in a row and then like don't regularly listen to it. My favorite music podcast is the New York Times Popcast. I like religiously listen to that. That is like, they just dropped an episode I think yesterday about modern gospel music. That was like incredible. But yeah, Broken Record. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell, I think gets a bad rap sometimes, but he, generally is like a really interesting person to read. And I've read all of his books, and I like that podcast. When is Chris Irwin getting a job with VMP? Drew Townsend. Yeah, shout out to Chris. Those videos that have been in the Blue Note group have been really incredible things to watch. So, we're not looking for a videographer right now, but we really appreciate him doing those cool things in the VMP group. Let's go to here. Charlie Bronner, my fellow Wisconsinite in the Anthology group. He asks, how many Thursday nights did you spend at Molly's at UW Oshkosh? This is going to be a little bit of a Wisconsin homer answer. UW Oshkosh is located in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Yeah, Charlie here is referring to Molly McGuire's, which is a like very odious and horrible bar that is where college kids hung out in Oshkosh. I think I only went there 3 times, but at least one of them was when I was about 17. So I didn't really like that. That wasn't my scene. They played way too much chingy in there for my taste in 2007. So I mostly hung out at Peabody's Ale House. This is going to be useful to literally no one but me and Charlie. But Charlie, if you're in Oshkosh, go to Peabody's. It's a good bar. They have a beer called Lizard Lager. Used to be able to get $6 pitchers, and it was a good time. Is there a Erica Q Kendall asks, is there a particular recording in the catalog that surprises you that it is not more popular or well received? That is an excellent question. Honestly, the fifth record we're doing for this box set is a record that when I listened to it, I was like, this is amazing. And I cannot believe that I have not heard of this record or really heard of the artist that much either. So, yeah, look out for VMP Anthology number 5. That record, that's one. Actually, number 6, too. I feel like I missed it when it came out originally, and I couldn't believe how incredible that was either. Roger asks, when are you guys announcing the release of a new pressing of US3 Hand on the Torch? I'm sure that everybody knows that record, everybody wants to reissue it. I'm not sure why it hasn't happened. Wink, wink. Okay, let's look here. Roger also asks, what were the other records that Don Was suggested? Will we get to see those in a future set? That has been probably the most common question we've had on the Anthology group so far. Just spilled some water. So the answer is we have that information somewhere in an email chain. Me and Cam narrowed it down from 12 original records. I guess we just don't really want to tell you what those are at this point, partially because we don't want you to go, but I like this one better, which is a fair opinion to have. But also just I think we sort of forgot the middle ones. I mean, I know what the alternative was for the last record, and I'm fairly sure what the alternative was for the 4th record. But the other ones, I'd have to dig up an email chain, and the amount of emails that we get, it's buried. But I mean, that's something that would be cool for you guys to know, maybe towards the end of this experience, just that here are the alternatives. And it wasn't so much we hate this record. It was a really tough decision for most of them, and it took Cam and I kind of going back and forth of is this the one we pick here? I know that the modern jazz record, Don said he was shocked that we picked the one that we did, and he thought it was a very brave pick. And he was like, I really like you guys for picking this one. He told me that while we were eating pizza during a break in our podcast recording. Okay, let's take another look here. Robert Haas asks, will this group stay together following the conclusion of the anthology? It'd be really cool if we could keep this going, at least through the conclusion of the Tone Poet series. I, for one, look forward to discussing future releases with the community here. I think that's still to be determined, but I mean, why not? It's it lives on Facebook. It doesn't require much energy for us. I think, I don't see a reason why we would completely get rid of that. So, yeah. So sure, we'll keep it around, Robert. All right, let's take a look. I think I got through. Oh wait, here we go. John Passelqua asks, will there be Blue Note VMP exclusives released in association with the anthology? There will not be exclusives specifically related to the anthology, but we will have Blue Note records if you like Blue Note, there will be records in our exclusives in the store. There will be Blue Note records in classics later this year. So there will be more Blue Note from VMP this year. The form of that will be very different depending on, when and which part of the company. John also asked, what was the worst aspect of the whole experience of putting this anthology together? As the person who makes the podcast, my window on this was incredibly small. I am not like I did not have to build the website. So like shout out to Jake because I'm sure Jake and Lee are tech people. I'm sure that was like a really hard aspect of this. Honestly, the worst part for me personally was having to go and record voiceovers by myself in a recording booth in Madison, Wisconsin, and just be alone with the sound of my own voice. It's a little bit like it is right now with this, where you just hear yourself talking, and you're not sure if people are listening, and you're not sure if like you're going to sound like an idiot, because when you record something like this, it's not until after that you see, or hear how you sounded. So like going into a booth and recording something like 40 minutes of voiceover and not having any idea if any of it was good until 6 hours later, that was the worst part for me personally. Okay, I think we got through the one post, the first one. Okay, let's go back to this. Do exclusives of the alts instead. Derek, that's a good idea. Maybe that's something we can talk to Blue Note about. Oh, my office building just, the lights in the office flickered. Roger, is there any chance VMP will issue some of the other Ambrose Ockenmuser on vinyl? What Ambrose Ockenmuser? Jeremy Ron, any exclusive Blue Note 80 pressings? Upgraded versions of those would be great. No, Blue Note we're doing records entirely different than what Blue Note is doing. We are like complimenting their 80th anniversary. The stuff that we have planned for later this year is not any of the things that they're doing. And a lot of the 80th stuff that I have gotten, the Tone Poet stuff, has been incredible. So, yeah, we don't have any plans to do 80th anniversary there. Alberto Russo asked in one of the things earlier, will every volume be dedicated to a single label? Have you considered creating a store with exclusives for Anthology subscribers? We have a store for Anthology subscribers. It can be found at app.vinylmeplease.com. It's our normal store. Will it always be devoted to a label? Probably not, but I think the first 2 or 3 will be. Beyond that, I think we've been in some talks for what the 4th one might be more artist related, but labels are just an easier thing to do because you can do a wide variety of releases. Whereas, like with Blue Note, we were able to do a, pretty wide variety of records under, the Blue Note umbrella. Whereas doing it as just one artist, like not every artist covers as much ground as this box set will. And that just makes it harder. Let's see. I just want to make sure I get to everybody. What are the details of what will be coming out and when for this anthology? You will start getting emails when we start shipping. Like has been said, if you do some work on looking at the album covers, you might be able to figure out what's coming. But when we ship you the first records, we will. What the first 2 records are. When we ship the 3rd and 4th record, we will be telling you explicitly these are the records, and then that's when the podcast episode will come out. The next episode of the podcast will come when we ship the first 2 records, which I think we're hoping will be in the next 2 weeks. We'll start shipping those. And that question was from Jay Necht. John Scott asked, will this session be recorded for those of us unable to catch it live? Yes, you will be able to watch this Facebook Live thing for everybody. So hi to everybody that's watching this later, I guess. More Blue Note is coming, Jeremy Ron. I said earlier, classics, in exclusives. We will be selling more than just the box set. Chris Irwin, what's up, man? Does a consolidation of catalogs into a handful of large entities help you plan future anthologies, or do you need to negotiate with each sub-label on an individual basis? That is like a pretty wonky business question, but I like it. I think honestly, it makes. I mean, I'm not the guy making the deals, but I think it makes it easier because it's like a single person we can go to at UMG and be like, hey, we would like to do XYZ titles from, the Blue Note catalog. With Blue Note, we worked more directly with them, and then it was UMG approved it. But like, it's kind of like a system where you go to the lower level, but you can also go to this like, standard person at UMG who can give you the go ahead, who is like checking down. So I think it makes it easier in that like it's a more corporate thing. They know who we are at a corporate level. Like if we suddenly work with somebody else at UMG, it's like they can say like, oh yes, we did this project with them on this, and then it's like a really an easily explainable thing. So yeah, I mean UMG we work with a lot, and they've been like a big help in a lot of different records for us. So it actually, I think it has probably made it easier. Christopher Cayley, what was the first Blue Note record you remember hearing? Where did you go next? I think it actually was Out to Lunch, because I like had heard that it was like this incredible experimental record, and yeah, so I like got that. And where did I go next is a good question. I would assume probably Blue Train was next for me. But yeah, I think Out to Lunch was the first one. I know that I had that on CD back when we were all still doing that. Yeah, Out to Lunch. All right, let's see if there's any more questions in the big chat threads here. $25 comments, 18 comments. Michael Andrew, you have a question in here that says "or band." I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Hit me up. Dennis Randall asks, will future anthologies also be announced 2 records at a time? You know what? That is an excellent question. We don't know yet. It's going to be based a lot, actually, on the feedback that you guys give after this experience. We know that this is like a very, unconventional way to tell you about, which records you're paying for. So like if it's the thing that you guys think is like incredibly annoying and you hate, let us know when we give you the survey, and maybe we don't do them. I know a thing that we've sort of been talking about is the next anthology theoretically could be bigger than 6 records. And then do we still do 3 shipments and do 2 shipments of 3 and 1 shipment of 2? Like we're playing around with it. Like this is really sort of like you guys are beta testing this idea. Like we had the idea, and we will hopefully figure this out going forward. So I don't know how to answer that yet. I think it's kind of cool, but I think it's the idea behind the 2 is that we are forcing you to spend time with those 2 specific records, and I think that's like a new test of the box set experience. Okay, Michael Andrew, favorite Canadian artist or band? That is a good question. Favorite Canadian artist or band? I mean, I don't want to say. I mean, you know what? I think I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with Wolf Parade. That was my favorite band in that Canadian boom of indie rock. I like really rode hard even for At Mount Zoomer. I thought that record was like really underrated. It was like a modern television record, and yeah, like I loved Wolf Parade. I also like Drake. Drake is cool. He's Canadian. Arcade Fire. I really like their first two records. The Suburbs is good too. Who else is in Canada, man? I'm on blanking. Stars are good. I really like Stars. Really excited about that exclusive we have coming. Yeah, that's my favorite Canadians. They're like, yeah, Justin Bieber. Actually, low key, Justin Bieber's Purpose, man. That record, that goes off. I own that on vinyl. That is like a really great record. Uh, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Alex Murdy. I did see them in Montreal actually at one point, and it was really awesome. But also, I think that's part of the reason I have horrible ears now. So, Jeremy Ron, yes, VMP Impulse. I think we have a couple of things working out with them. Not necessarily a box set at this point, but I think I said earlier, probably before you were hopping on, Impulse is definitely like a label that would be considered for an anthology at some point. Oh yeah, I forgot. Shout out Clay. Oh no. Hold on one second. Let me turn the light on in here. Oh no. All right. Apparently, I have run into the timer on our the office lights here. Actually, let me go and pull this out. There's a light on in the main room. One second. I guess I found out that there's an 8 p.m. timer on our office. All right, so I'm going to finish up these questions and we're going to call it a night. Clay Condor, shout out Clay, is VMP's designer. Coulter Wall is from Canada. I totally forgot that. Coulter's my man. That record last year was my favorite album of 2018. So sorry to Coulter Wall and the great people of Saskatchewan. All right, Jeremy, using the Iron Maiden model for boxes anthologies would be cool. Send outer box with first 2-3 records with option to fill out the rest. Almost everyone filled up, but they didn't have to. Interesting thing to think about for us. Make sure you put that down in the survey part of it. All right, I think we're gonna call it a. Wait, Fritz Gutwine. I'm sorry, we answered that earlier. Yeah, are we going to reveal the other ones? Probably. When? I don't know yet. But yeah, I'm going to pack it in. Thanks everybody for turning out and doing this. This video will be available in the videos tab to the left on Facebook Live. We'll talk to you guys later, and stay tuned for more stuff in the VMP Anthology group. See you guys later.